Welcome to episode 132. Have you been thinking it's time to get away, but planning the trip is half the battle? Then let the travel specialists at 3D Travel Company plan your getaway today. Just head to my website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click the 3D Travel Company logo on our homepage to get your free quote today.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. Today's special guest is best known for his intergalactic travels as a villain around the galaxies. Now, before we get to that, I'd like to thank each and every one of my listeners, whether it's your first time or your 100th time, thank you for listening to the show. Today's special guest is the voice of Elgar from Power Rangers Turbo and Power Rangers in Space. He's also the voice of Noxic from Big Bad Beetleborgs, Treacheron from Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, and Auric the Conqueror from Power Rangers Zeo. I hope you guys enjoyed today's special clips and the interview to follow with today's amazing special guest. I hope you all enjoy.
I am Auric the Conqueror, defender of all that is good and true.
I am Sprocket the Small and Meek, and I really need your help, Mr. Conqueror. I have a problem, and there's not anyone else I can turn to.
What is it, little metal boy?
Oh, I don't know what to do! A horrible team of evil supervillains is going to destroy the Earth!
Great galaxies! Go on, my child.
They're called the Power Rangers, and they're really mean! Will you help us, Mr. Auric?
Of course! My calling is to defend the weak and helpless. I'll defeat the Power Rangers immediately! Hey, fellas! I got a little proposition for you!
Don't worry, Skull. Stay calm. I have a plan.
Okay, here it is. Either you step aside or I blast you. Oh, brother. They's just too strong for us.
Maybe for you two, but not for me.
Oh, great Treacheron!
What can we do?
Worry not, brave soldiers, for this is my battle, and I'll finish it! Starting with you, Red Ranger.
Baby, it feels so good to be three-dimensional.
You could say that again. Oh, and you know what would really make the day complete? To do some serious three-dimensional damage. What do you say?
Whoa, Magnaborg jet fighter!
Aren't robot-controlled pilots the best?
Okay. That was fun, but now let's blow up something really big.
Ladies and gentlemen,
boys and girls,
welcome to Who Did That Voice?
In just a moment, the show will begin. So please, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice? I am super excited to be bringing you an interview with a man who has voiced some of the most sinister villains of all times throughout the galaxy. We're talking with Derek Stephen Prince. Derek, thank you so much for joining me on the show today, man.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're going to go ahead and call you Steve as that is what you prefer, correct?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Steve, the very first thing we love to do when we get a guest on the show, and before we dive into all your amazing intergalactic voiceovers that you've done, is we're going to get to know you just a little bit better. You know, I feel like when I get to know my special guest, number one, I get to know them on a level that makes it so much more personal for me the next time I watch their shows or listen to their video games or whatever I'm doing. It just makes things more impactful for me. So we really love to get to know our special guest on the show. So tell me about little Steve, the boy that grew up into the man he is today. And how did he become an actor?
Well, oddly enough, I've actually been acting since I was about 8 years old.
Dang.
So, not to totally date myself, but pretty much I've been an actor for 41 years of my life.
Wow. That's pretty epic, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, I have always been around theater. My dad was in community theater. My mom was in community theater. My mom was a dancer. My dad was a singer. Very little known fact, but my great uncle was the first actor to be able to actually portray Pinocchio on stage before Pinocchio was even a cartoon.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, it kind of just runs in my blood, I guess.
Nice.
And stage was mostly, what I did. I did a little bit of writing when I was a kid. I actually remember my very, very first play was something about Rudolph being stolen, and I wrote it, and I was starring as Rudolph, and some weird, wacky, crazy thing.
Nice.
And from there, I just because I liked it a lot, I just was surrounding myself with people who were either in theater or like theater. So when I was later on in my elementary school years, more like junior high, I was with a troupe. I live in California. I don't know how many people are going to know where Santa Clarita is, but or Magic Mountain. But basically, I was with a troupe out in that area and had a great teacher who was my best friend's mom. And she taught us, about proper stage techniques and mime and all that stuff. And then when I was in high school, I was not only in theater at my high school, but also in community theater, 2 different community theaters. So I was basically doing, I remember at one point in time, like doing 3 shows at the same time.
Dang.
And from there, I went to Carnegie Mellon University, studied musical theater, and got a Bachelor of Fine Arts there. Went to New York for a couple of years thinking I was going to be this great big Broadway star. Didn't happen. Most of the stuff I got hired for was touring shows, and as much as I liked going to different cities, I did not like living out of a suitcase.
Oh yeah,
so
I hear that.
I came back to California, and I started through my Carnegie Mellon connections, was able to be in a couple of TV shows and a couple of movies. And then my agent, for whatever weird, wacky, strange reason, decided to just say, I'm not going to be an agent anymore. Didn't tell any of his clients.
Wow.
And just found out one day by going by the building and seeing like a sign saying closed.
Wow.
And so, that kind of messed with my plans of trying to make it out in Hollywood.
Yeah, definitely.
And was taking just to, I was still doing some stage stuff, community theater in the Hollywood area. I was taking classes at SAG Conservatory, which is like this, at that point in time, it was like this building where, actors who were in the union could study from people that are currently in the industry and learn different things, whether it be, stage or whether it be makeup or whatever,
nice.
Whatever people were interested in.
Yeah.
So this one particular class that I was interested in, which was Introduction to Voiceovers, was being taught by Bob Bergen.
Oh, nice.
If you guys know that name. He plays the voice of Porky Pig and Tweety Bird for the Looney Tunes cartoons.
Yeah.
He basically got the torch handed to him from Mel Blanc. Because of the training that I had, and I knew a little bit about mic techniques and when I was, at Carnegie Mellon, but not to the extent of which, even though it was just an introduction to voiceovers, that he kind of delved into. But because of the training that I had, and because I knew how to, conduct myself, he thought that I was just there taking the class as a brush up. Like I was already a voiceover actor, and I was just, brushing up and, So he actually stopped me as everybody was leaving. He goes, hey, so, can I have one of your demos? And I had no idea what he was talking about because the only demo that I knew of was on camera.
Yeah.
Like, why do you want an on-camera demo? I don't. He goes, no, like for voiceovers. I'm going, oh, I didn't know that there was one for voiceovers. He goes, oh my gosh, like what? I thought you were just like brushing up. And he goes, do you not know, a lot about voiceovers? And I go, not really. It's like my first introduction, other than what I did when I was in college. And he goes, well, you really, you had me impressed. So if that's something that you think you want to learn more about, I would suggest that you start taking classes from people that are in the industry. If you keep at it, you will probably be able to do some stuff later on. So Bob was my mentor.
Oh, that's awesome.
I took classes from him for probably a couple of months, and then he introduced me to some other people. At that point in time, 20 some odd years ago. People, you know, like Sue Blue and Nick O'Mana, and you know, the big ones back then, not anymore, but you know. So I studied from all those people, and he happened to be doing a dub for Eagle Riders. It was the very last episode that he recorded, because after this episode, he said, basically, you know, I'm going to be done with anime. It's like not the direction that I want to go in. But that was my introduction to anime. And I saw it and I was going, wow, this is like kind of cool. Like how you have to try and match the mouth flaps and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was my intro. I did my demo. And then Hollywood Reporter, which is one of the two leading industry, at that point in time, magazines that existed in Hollywood, they had an animation issue, one in November and the other one in February. So I remember this was in February, and I was basically, at that point in time, I don't know if it even still exists anymore to this extent as far as the information that they used to provide, but back then you could actually get a hold of anybody associated with a production, whether it be pre-production, production, or post-production. So you can contact the casting director. You could contact the editor. You could contact the director.
Wow.
It had all of their phone numbers there.
Dang.
And so I basically just went down the list. Like every single production company, I was just basically doing the same spiel. Hi, I'm Derek Stephen Prince. You know, I'm the voiceover actor. I have a demo. I would love to be able to mail it to you, because at that point in time, the only demo that existed was on cassette tape.
Yeah.
I know I'm really dating myself. And so I kept doing that. And every time I picked up the phone, it was like, in this industry, especially with voiceovers and where it is now, it's like, if you can't take rejection, don't try even getting into the industry.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
you are rejected way more than you are ever accepted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is exactly what happened to me. Like every single time, virtually getting the door slammed in my face over and over and over and over again. And I will never forget this. I saw this full page spread from Saban, and it didn't necessarily have what productions they were working on, just the company name.
Yeah.
And a phone number. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'll call him. And so I called, and the woman answered the phone, who was the secretary for Saban Entertainment. And I said, yeah, I went through my whole spiel. And yeah, after I was done with my spiel, it's like, I didn't hear anything. It's like, thought, oh, hello? Is anybody there? And she goes, hang on a second. I'm taking a look at my calendar. I'm going, oh, okay. So, I mean, to me, it seemed like an eternity. Like I was waiting on the phone with silence, and I'm going, oh my God, like what the heck is happening? And she finally comes back and she goes, so what are you doing next Thursday? And I'm going, I don't know why. She goes, I was wondering if you want to come in for an audition that we're having for this show called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Nice. And I said, you don't want me to send you my demo? And I will never forget this. She was this very sweet but sassy African-American woman. And she said, why do I need to hear your demo when I am talking to you on the phone? I'm going, okay, good point. So I went in. I saw the sides that were there on the table. I looked at them all. I think they wanted, I can't remember if they wanted me to audition for the specific character or not, or whether I read for it, but whatever the case might be, the character obviously that I wound up doing, which was my very, very, very first voiceover, was for Power Rangers Zeo, and I played Auric the Conqueror for a couple of episodes. And so that was basically my start. And because of the way that I conducted myself in the studio and my training behind the mic, because I got trained by the best, they could see that. And, you know, and it's like I was very much of a business person, but yet at the same time being playful enough so that they would like me. And, you know, just went in, went out, did my stuff. And I was usually one of the few voiceover actors that got their work done like way before they had me scheduled, because usually like you have a 2-hour block and I get it done in like an hour and 15 minutes.
Wow.
It's like, oh, okay. And or an hour and a half, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
Because of the way that they had that set up over at Saban, that's where I got introduced to a lot of people that I'm working with today.
That's awesome.
So they would have guest directors that would come in, like Kirk Thornton or Richard Epcar or Michael Sorich or Wendy Lee. And, I would work for these people. They'd see the work ethic that I had, and then it just kind of spread like wildfire because of, what I was able to do, which led me into everything else that, kind of dovetailed in after that. So that was 23 years ago.
And man, that is crazy epic. And Auric the Conqueror was one of the most epic characters I felt in Zeo. He was
really?
Yeah, I thought he was really cool because he was just a very unique Zord, like whenever they put the key in and opened him up, like he was just a badass. So, you getting to voice him, he's kind of like Ninjor for me. He was a really epic character. So I really was like, oh my gosh, he's Auric the Conqueror. Like I never owned the Zord, but that was one of the toys I always wanted as a kid because it was just so badass, dude. I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Dude, I'm so glad you remember it because I barely remember the character at all.
Well, dude, I'm a huge Power Rangers fan. I grew up with Saban, and so Saban's entertainment stuff, when they did it back in the day, like up until I think it was Lost Galaxy pretty much, that was just super epic in the way they tied everything together, and the characters were like family, and there was just something about Power Rangers that somewhat kind of exists today, but it's changed completely from what it originally was back, 20 some odd years ago. One of the other shows I fell in love with was very similar to Power Rangers, was called Big Bad Beetleborgs, where you played villain Noxic, and you also played Super Noxic. And dude, that show kicked butt. I hated that it ended so soon. The kids were amazing. I thought Power Rangers was more of like a teenage pre-like 20s kind of show, and then Beetleborgs was like a preteen to teenager show, so it kind of gapped the age range, but the way they morphed and everything, it was like these young kids could turn into superheroes out of their comic book. Is like, dude, that's super epic.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So what was it like getting to work on that show with that cast of people? I'm sure you probably just were in the studio mostly doing voice records, but were you ever on set, or did you get to see any of the action? Or
no, I was never on set.
Okay.
Never saw any of the action. The only time that I was ever in the studio was when I was just recording my own stuff.
Yeah.
Very rarely, if ever, saw any of the other actors, although very funny story. And I hope he never hears this. I'm not going to say anything bad about him, but I will just say this. When I was doing Power Rangers Turbo, and I was playing Elgar, I will never forget the times that I would go into the studio and I'd have to wait because I would get there early. And, I get to watch some of the Power Rangers dub their own stuff.
Nice.
And, sometimes not nice. I mean, not in a bad way, but, there are some actors that you just look at and you go, yeah, that's why you do stuff on camera. Because it doesn't just, and here I was being like the stuck-up mic person now. It's like, no, that's not how you do that behind the mic. And one of those actors that I thought that about at the time was Johnny Young Bosch.
Oh, what?
I mean, obviously, that was just when he was
just starting out, man.
Starting out behind the mic. So,
oh my gosh,
obviously, look where he is now.
Oh my God, he's like megastar. Yeah, he's amazing.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. But yeah. I can't believe you thought that about Johnny. Dude. Yeah, he's done so much voiceover stuff. It's ridiculous lately.
Yes, he has.
It's really ridiculous. But, and the one thing I never realized was when I started doing my voiceover podcast, I never really thought about the Power Rangers actually doing voiceover. But when they have the costumes on, you can't hear anything. I've been told practically through those suits. It's all muffled.
Oh, yeah.
So I never ever thought, wow, voiceover can be on live action too. So I've learned so much by doing this show. I started August of 2016, going almost 2 years now. Wow. It's just amazing how much I've learned and how much voiceover really is everywhere, even if you don't realize it.
Right. Yeah. totally.
Well, it's really cool, Steve. You were talking about Elgar. Who is Elgar? He is from Power Rangers Turbo and again in space. You were also in the Turbo movie, the second movie that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the series kind of had. Who was Elgar and what did he sound like? Can you give us a little sample and help us remember?
He was the egg-headed shaped alien with big eyes and big teeth, and he was a big goofball. I mean, he tried being evil, but everything he did was just bumble-ish. So, it's like,
excuse me, I thought, I just thought this was a gun, but I guess it's not.
Something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elgar was one of my absolute favorites too. I mean, you've played some of the most epic villains on the series, I mean, Elgar to me was kind of like the Goldar of Turbo. You know what I mean? Like he was pretty epic. I can't remember his like cousin or brother's name, the Skull and Bones guy that Goldar teamed up with. But like
I don't either.
Elgar was kind of more like that. He was a little bit more goofball-y and nutsy like the skeleton, but he was also kind of a leader like Goldar was. Not necessarily as epic, but still pretty epic for that franchise because he carried a long time through the series, which was pretty crazy.
Yeah, he did.
So,
yeah.
And also, with Auric the Conqueror and Noxic from Big Bad Beetleborgs, I mean, you got to play some pretty iconic villains on some pretty awesome Saban shows, but you've also played another amazing villain that I loved on Lost Galaxy was Treacheron. Absolutely loved Treacheron.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you got to play the samurai wielding space, villain, but, just kind of a variety of different characters you played that were all seemed to be pretty epic, iconic characters that you ended up getting to voice, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I was, I don't know. That's the way I was viewed for a very long time by Saban.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And unfortunately, like we talked about, after Lost Galaxy, things did kind of change a little bit. I think you did do a few more Power Rangers series after Lost Galaxy, but it was just a little bit of like a small villain here and there kind of a thing, tidbit, but not a whole lot of the big lead characters much after Treacheron.
Yeah, not much after that. Although, if you guys remember, Saban was responsible in part for Digimon.
Yes.
So after, things started fizzling with Power Rangers, then I'm just lucky enough as an actor to be able to do this. But I don't know how many people realize this. I was pretty much in every single season of Digimon except for season 5.
Really?
And I was cast. I had to audition for each of the seasons, except for season 4. But yeah, I mean, and that was epic too. I mean, there were some pretty big evil villains in that one as well.
Well, Digimon kind of reminded me of a mixture between Pokemon and Power Rangers because they would like kind of almost morph. It was really kind of a cool combination of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was a very unique show, and I know it was kind of a lot of people would kind of compare it and say, "Oh, it's like a Pokemon ripoff." Yes, you could kind of argue that, but I mean, there's a lot of Japanese shows that are very similar-esque in some way or another. So you could really say that about a ton of shows, but I loved the uniqueness of Digimon, and Saban really did bring some pretty cool stuff to the US. So
yeah.
But, one of the other cool things you got to voice another villain from another franchise that's extremely, extremely popular was from Dragon Ball Super, where you got to voice Frieza, who's one of the most epic villains of all times in the Dragon Ball universe. What was that like for you getting to voice that character on Dragon Ball Super?
Okay, now let me preface this by everybody who's listening.
Okay.
The following, because this is extremely important. I take this very, very seriously.
Okay.
So my role as Frieza in Dragon Ball Super is not the Funimation version of Dragon Ball Super.
Okay.
My version of Dragon Ball Super came out because I don't know why, but Toonami decided to create a subsidiary underneath of themselves called Toonami Asia. And for Toonami Asia, that franchise specifically was taking anime to those countries like Korea, like Vietnam, like the Philippines, like Cambodia, and basically using anime as a tool to be able to help those people speak English. of all things.
Wow.
Now, why they didn't use the same cast, I don't know to this day. Like, I could never figure out. It's like, you're recording this already in Texas under Funimation. Why do you need a separate English dubbing cast? But for whatever reason, they did that. It came out here to California for what they were going to put under Toonami Asia. And as soon as I found out what they wanted me to audition for, I had a very long conversation with Chris Ayres.
Okay.
And I said, dude, I don't know if you know what's going on. And this is not meant to offend you or anybody at Funimation. It is a business decision on Toonami's part that they are doing this. I just wanted to let you know that they wanted me to initially sound like you. And I get that. But since these countries have never heard of the show before and they're being introduced to it for the first time, I will definitely go along with that direction at first. But I hope it's okay with you. If I'm going to do this character, I need to bring myself into it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be like I'm living in somebody else's skin.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I totally get that. And I appreciate you talking to me about it, because unfortunately, there were some other actors who did not necessarily have that kind of conversation with the other actors who basically made those characters who they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I felt it was my responsibility as an actor to, not, because I hate it when I've been in this situation where I was replaced, by somebody else, and nobody ever told me about it, and it just happened. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, okay. But this was, like I said, this was Toonami's decision to do what they did. And I think that I had like 3 auditions for that, because I did the initial audition. They were then funneling it down to a few actors, and then from there, the last few. And I obviously made it through all of those callbacks. I think the reason, I don't know. I can never speculate why a casting director hires me. All I know is that what I bring to the table when I create a voice for a villain is that, and hopefully you guys recognize this from any of the characters that I've done, I never make it just a voice.
Yeah.
It is somebody human, something happened to them, and something caused them to go in the direction that they are now in. So there's always this conflict that is making them, or not making them, but is causing them to be evil.
Yeah.
And because there's that human characteristic to it, it's like you want to hate this villain. Like sometimes you really, really want to hate this villain, but you can't hate him 100% because there's I don't know what it is about this guy, but it's like, oh man, it's like you almost feel bad for him in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
especially Elgar.
Yeah. So that's what I brought. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why they hired me for that. The direction that I went for any of, I don't even know where it's available, where somebody can actually hear. Actually, I do. I talked to a fan once who was in, where was it? Finland or Switzerland.
Okay.
And somehow they got the same Toonami channel that Toonami Asia gets. So they were actually able to see my version of it, and they said, wow, you did a great job. I said, okay, great. The only sample that I have is stuff that I happen to record, just so I can, I guess for commemoration's sake, listen back to it sometime. But my version differed a lot from Chris in the sense that, especially as he became Golden Frieza, I made him more lizard sounding, which goes along with the whole alien thing and the tail and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was great. I mean, I don't know if I have my information correct, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe what we did for Toonami Asia was a very small portion of Dragon Ball Super, not like the whole series.
Oh, okay. Okay.
and maybe they just did it from certain episodes to certain episodes. I don't know. But you know, it was one of those things that was kind of like surreal in a way. It's like, wait, am I actually doing this? And as much as I made it my own, I still always had in the back of my head, it's like, man, you know, I'm doing this and I'm having fun doing it, but yet it's not my character.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just
I totally understand.
I'm just filling somebody else's shoes. It's one of those it's one of those roles that is just always going to stay with me and just have that. I wouldn't say it's a stigma, but you know, it's just like, doesn't matter. You know, it's like I can't get away from it. It's hard. It's hard to.
Yeah. Well, I totally understand. You know, I've heard similar stories before, and I know that, you know, any instance where you're coming into the shoes of someone else, it's, you know, it's a big thing to do that. You know, I understand, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you know, Steve, it has been awesome to chat with you today, man. We've had some pretty amazing stories and talked about some awesome characters that you've gotten to voice that are super epic throughout the galaxy. I have one final question for you, and we will wrap this interview up. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right. The question is, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Wow. I think I kind of touched on it a little bit. I think as a voiceover actor and the training that I've had, it's like nothing gives me greater joy than being able to actually bring a character to life. And when I'm able to do that in a believable manner, people get sucked in.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything bad about any other voice actor, but there are some anime shows that you watch and it's like you don't get into it.
Yeah.
You just don't. It's like you're almost it's like you're watching a television. It's not like you're inside the television screen. It's like you're just kind of there sitting watching. It's like, okay, cool. But it doesn't suck you in. And what I try and do with every single character that I have, whether it's a hero or whether it's a villain, is bring that human quality to them and do it in such a way where you can't help but be sucked in.
Yeah.
You know? And as long as I'm able to do that as an actor and make fans happy in the process of doing it because of the characters that I portray, then it's like, you know what? That's my legacy.
That's a fantastic legacy, Steve. I absolutely love it. And man, I can't thank you enough. It has been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the show today, bud. Would you please do us you're so welcome, man. You're so welcome. Would you please do us the extreme honor of closing us out as Noxic from Big Bad Beetleborgs?
So I'm gonna, go to this right here, and I'm basically just gonna say, hey, all you Beetleborg fans out there, stay cool, and if you find a Beetleborg, eliminate them for me, because I can't find them fast enough. This is Derek Stephen Prince, and you're listening to Who Did That Voice? All right, guys, whatever you do, find those Beetleborgs and eliminate them for me.
Well, everyone, I sure hope you enjoyed today's episode with Derek Stephen Prince, the voice of Elgar, Noxic, Treacheron, Auric the Conqueror, and so much more. And if you did, please find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram by searching Who Did That Voice. And don't forget to like, comment, and share. For those of you listening on YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button today and the little bell notification on the right-hand side so you don't miss out on a single episode. I've been your host, Trenton Larkin, and I'll see you next time. You know, a question you might ask yourself is, where can I listen to Who Did That Voice? That's an excellent question. You can hear us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co. Click the episodes tab and listen away. Do you have a great idea for a podcast? Ever thought of creating your own show? If so, send me a message by visiting my website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and use the Contact Me section at the bottom of the homepage for your free 30-minute consultation and quote. Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us next time for our special tribute episode to June Foray, the voice of Granny from Looney Tunes, and Magica Dispel from DuckTales, and so much more. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, do you ask yourself who did that voice? Well, if you do, go to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click on the Episodes tab. Choose an actor, pick their name, and see pictures from the different characters they voiced in their career.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.